Welcome to the Rubenstein School at the University of Vermont. What we're going to talk about mostly today is the Aiken Center, which is our main building for administration and kind of the headquarters of the Rubenstein School. And as a lot of the activities in the Rubenstein School, where we work on conservation of not only land, animals, water, we've also adopted in the last 20 years or so, we've adopted the sustainabilities of our building operations. So that has many pieces to it that I'll be talking about today. You'll see a few different activities related to research and building sustainability. Particularly today, I guess I'm going to talk about the green roof. So as part of the effort with building sustainability, one of the major things that we've done in the last 20 years was totally redesign and renovate the Aiken Center. At one time, it was a very poorly designed and poorly, in terms of energy efficiency, performance-wise, it was not good. So we spent a lot of time with student help and various classes that helped design and pick materials for the building. We're now fortunate to be a LEED Platinum building, which is the highest level for leadership in energy and environmental design, kind of green building standard system. So one of the activities with this building is we're not done now that we've reached LEED Platinum. We keep advancing the design of the building and materials and using it as a really valuable teaching tool to not only UVM students, but the community and faculty and staff that want to learn more about what they can do to advance their buildings. In the past, we've dealt more with building performance and energy use, but over the last 4 or 5 years, we've started to concentrate on other resources that the building use. And the main one is water use. So we're trying to figure out ways of substituting stormwater for non-potable water use. That activity involves diverting stormwater into an existing gray water system in the building so that we can use stormwater to flush toilets and other non-potable water uses. And we're advancing that, and I think we're getting closer to actually installing it into an existing system. And that will result with a 50% reduction in potable water use in the building. Welcome to the green roof on the Aiken Center. As I said, green roof, it's actually 8 separate green roofs. So this is designed as a research project where we've imposed 4 different treatments of different plants and soil types, and one of those is also a control treatment. But if you look, when we start walking around, you'll notice that there's 8 separately drained watersheds up here. So those represent the different treatments.
One of the things that we'll be learning in the Stormwater Education Methods course is what a watershed is. And that is the area of land that drains to a common point or common water body in the case of Lake Champlain, or any of the tributaries that drain to Lake Champlain, or any tributary or lake anywhere. Everyone lives in a watershed.
So one of the things that we found to be quite interesting was, how do we design this study so that we can maximize the amount of valuable information that we get out of it? So there's actually about 875 2-foot wide by 4-foot long flats of plants that were grown elsewhere and shipped here on a semi-truck, lifted up onto the roof with a huge crane. And then we actually randomly assigned the treatments, as you should do in science, to the different treatment locations or the different watersheds. We actually have 8 separately drained watersheds up here. So that gives us an opportunity to learn more about the impact of different foliage, different plant types, different soil types on the ability to retain stormwater or to manage unwanted nutrients that we don't want to go into stormwater. So I'll now tell you briefly about the 4 different treatments. First, and perhaps some scientists would claim to be the most important treatment that we all add to scientific studies, is controls. So we have 2 randomly selected watersheds up here that don't have any vegetation on it. So that's the way this roof would perform without a green roof. So that's an important comparison to the performance of the other treatments. And the other 3 treatments, one of them is what we talked to providers of green roof plant material, and we asked them what plants and what soil would you suggest would be valuable in Burlington, Vermont area. And they designed six or seven different species, mostly sedum plants species. And that's one treatment. So two of the watersheds up here have what we call standard plants and standard soil. The next thing we decided to do was let's see if we can select a different set of plants that might outperform the standard plants. So we had people at the university and a class that I teach every year, and we researched different plants that might transpire water faster and thus allow the soil to dry out quicker and be ready to absorb the next storm. So that we call our alternative plants treatment. So there's two watersheds up here that have a different set of plants, the same exact soil, so that when we make conclusions about that data that comes from those watersheds, we can be sure that it's due to the fact that there are different plants. The next treatment I'll describe is we altered the soil. So we kept the plant standard, and then we added what we call biochar to the soil, which is basically a carbon-based byproduct of burning organic matter at really high temperatures. So the theory is that biochar should allow, if you add it to a soil, it should allow that soil to absorb more water, thus reducing stormwater discharge, and it's supposed to sequester more nitrogen compounds and phosphorus compounds. So we had the last treatment, we call it a alternative soil, and that's the biochar treatment. Okay, I just wanted to point out this is an example of one of the two biochar watersheds. This is watershed 8. So everything from this line all the way over to the edge of the wall drains into the drain for watershed 8. And if we look over here, this is actually watershed 7, which is one of the standard plants, standard soil watersheds. So that goes all the way up there around. And as you probably could figure out, is each one of these watersheds is not the same size. So they're all different sizes here because we had to work with the existing rooftop. So we've had to, as you might expect, is to standardize all the data. So all the data that we get out of here is expressed as a discharge per square meter type. Okay, one of the things that's important about the data that we get from this, we have to be assured of any water that hits here or any snow that melts in each one of the watersheds drains properly so that we know that moisture, that precipitation was from that watershed. So it's a little easier to see in this control watershed. So each watershed is shaped in such a way that it drains to a single drain. And then in a few minutes I'll talk more about where the drain gets monitored from. So there's actually 8 drains up here, one from each of the 8 watersheds. So as I mentioned up on the green roof when we were talking about the precipitation monitoring system with a little tipping bucket in it, these are actually the tipping buckets that monitor each of the 8 watersheds. So all the water leaving a watershed, as I explained on the roof, goes to a single drain, and that single drain goes to the appropriate tipping buckets. We have 8 tipping buckets, one for each watershed. So the way this works is just like the tipping bucket up on the roof, is that there's 2 parts to the bucket. When each one fills, it tips, and then it fills the other side and tips, and those signals are monitored and go to a data logger that we have that records that every 5 minutes. And another feature of this that's important is that every other tip we do what's called proportional water sampling. So every other tip, the water goes into a flask that's labeled for that particular watershed, and then we can take water out of there and measure it for the nutrients that we think are important, like nitrogen, phosphorus, anything we want to be aware of what's going into stormwater, so that we can determine the impact of the 4 different treatments that we have on the roof on not only water volume, how much is sequestered in that soil and plants, but also water quality. Yeah, actually, when I first started, this is probably a little too complicated for that stuff.
Yeah, I don't think that.
Yeah, but so the ones, as you might expect, like nitrogen, but we actually get, I think for nitrate, we actually get more nitrate out of the water.
So Gary, do you know how many green roofs there are in Burlington?
Well, that's a really good question, because one of the goals of producing this green roof was to be able to monitor the value of it, so we can tell people, it pays to put up a green roof for this purpose or that purpose. And I can talk a little bit about the data that's come out of that in a while. I would imagine there are probably numerous small green roofs of a few flats on certain areas in Burlington. I do know, I think the hospital has a green roof, the airport has a pretty big green roof. There are all kinds of considerations when you're trying to decide whether or not to put up a green roof. I mean, one of them is the cost of it. I mean, it is expensive. I can't remember the exact cost of this, but it was tens and tens of thousands of dollars just to buy the plant material to put up here, and the maintenance of it. I mean, we gain dramatically from it from an educational standpoint. We bring a lot of students up here. We have research activities going on up here, so it's probably can't even put a dollar amount on the value of it to the university.
Do you know the return on investment in terms of if somebody was to invest, say, at another business, how long would it take before they have the savings in heat or cooling as a result of having the green roof?
That's a great question. I haven't done those calculations. I mean, I could tell you exactly how much thermal value it is, like how many degrees cooler it is under the flats compared to out here in the open, which would probably be the type of information you could include in that cost-benefit analysis. See, I was thinking of something else I wanted to say there too.
I was in Amsterdam the last 2 years with a travel study course, and one of the things in the Netherlands and Amsterdam that they have done is they not only require buildings that are new to be having green roofs, but they call them, I think they get something like green and blue roofs, because they also want them to capture stormwater.
Nice.
They are minimizing runoff from that urban area.
Yeah, I know there are a couple places in Germany, and Stuttgart in Germany requires all flat top buildings to have green roofs. And that cost-benefit analysis, in some cases you're charged a stormwater fee for the impact of your structure on the stormwater of a municipality. And if you consider that, I'll just give you a fact that we've learned from this green roof, is that with the green roof, we reduce stormwater total volume over a whole year period by 50%. So I would think that you could lobby to have a 50% reduction in the stormwater fee, and that should go in your calculation of determining whether or not it pays to have a green roof.
Yeah. Would this be a good time to ask about the cisterns, because is that the other 50%?
You mean that we're going to use to reflush toilets?
Right.
No, that's a good question. Originally we had designed, or we had thought that once the eco machine was taken apart, that was supposed to be water from that, which was treated black water, was supposed to be used to flush toilets. We decided that maybe we can use stormwater, and we thought instantly of why don't we redirect water that's leaving the green roof. But the problem is that leaves in a whole bunch of different areas around the building, and it was going to be way too prohibitive to pay to have that all brought in. So our next thought was, well, there's plenty of other stormwater on campus. There's all kinds of infrastructure which deals with reducing stormwater and getting it into stormwater detention ponds and stuff. So we've come up with an idea where we want to divert it out of one of the main systems into the tanks, which basically, as you said, are cisterns that allow us to kind of bank up approximately 7,000 gallons of water to be used to reflush toilets. Yeah. It's not easy though to get the engineering done, and oh man.
Yeah.
But to divert stormwater
Yeah,
to
I mean,
it.
it just seems like it's the future, right? It's the future.
Right.
And are we training engineers to be able to do that?
Right. And
Yeah.
the other benefit, I mean, if you can't do it in the Aiken Center, it's going to be hard to do elsewhere because we have an existing gray water, a totally separate piping system within the building, and totally separate filters and tanks and UV radiation, everything we need to use stormwater to reflush toilets. I mean, if we were to add that to a building, it would probably be hundreds of thousands of dollars. Yeah.
So we just need one big grant.
Well, I don't know, you know, I'm getting some estimates, you know, to divert stormwater from the roof to that system was going to be over $200,000, but we're now trying to figure out how we can divert it from a stormwater location between us and the Davis Center into the tanks. And once you get it to the tanks, everything else exists. Yeah. Okay. So one thing I wanted to explain briefly that, as I've said, this is a research project, but probably much more importantly is the educational opportunities it provides the university. So I teach a course every spring, and Chris teaches courses where they come up here and they learn the value of green roof, they learn the importance of it. And in my class in particular, students work up here where they'll document species of plants that are here, and they'll work with the data from this discharge of the watersheds, which is really important. And about 5 or 6 years ago, I had a student that came up and started looking at the different plants here, and there's kind of two major things we noticed. One was for that alternative plant treatment that I talked about, where we chose a different set of plants, it generally failed. But the good thing is, because we have other treatments in close proximity, sedum actually seeded in to that area. So if you see that far watershed there, that was full of alternative plants, and now it's almost entirely full of the same sedum species that are performing well in the control treatments, which was kind of neat to be able to figure out. One other little thing that was interesting is this is actually the alternative soil treatment right here. So this has 10% by volume of biochar in it. And one thing we noticed when we were identifying plant species, it's a little hard to see now because they're not flowering, but these little small flower stalks that you see on here are from a plant that did not exist up here at all, wasn't in any of the treatments, and we noticed it started coming in only in the biochar treatment. So we started thinking about what does that mean? And the only thing we could come up with was the biochar must provide some type of change in the soil that allows this plant that probably blew in, or maybe it came in from a bird or something, but it allows this plant to survive and compete pretty well in these treatments, which was kind of neat. I mean, we never anticipated something like that. So it could be a change in pH, it could be a change in availability of different nutrient concentrations that allow these plants to survive. That's my little story.
That's cool.
Student help in this project has been tremendous. That's not only helped me to gather data, but helped them in learning more about sustainable building practices. And a couple of the things that they've done, one is they've mapped out the presence of the different species, because every single one of these flats for that treatment had the exact same number initially put in of each of the 6 or 7 different plant species. So we know they all started the same. So if they're different now, that's due to the treatment or some other aspect of change. We do have to fertilize up here. You're supposed to do it a couple times a year. We try not to do it that often because we're trying to measure nutrients leaving, so we don't want to exceed the capacity to sequester those nutrients. Probably one of the most important things that students help me with is the discharge coming from the different watersheds. So we measure the exact amount of water leaving these watersheds every 5 minutes. Okay, and we also do, and I'll explain this a little more later, we also do water samples so that we can measure the amount of phosphorus leaving, the amount of nitrogen compounds leaving, and then amazingly, we found compounds in here. This was kind of a really interesting project for students. We found some compounds that don't come in atmospherically and are not present in any of the plants or the soil. So that was our charge to the students, is tell me how they got here. And so I don't know if you want me to answer that? Okay. So what we came up with some various experiments that the students designed was, I can't remember what the compound was. It might have been cadmium. It was a heavy metal that was coming in. But what we surmised was, with acid rain actually leach the compounds off of these galvanized fence system that surrounds the place. And I asked the students, so you got to design something that documents that. So they developed an artificial acid rain with the proper pH and other components, and they literally hung receptacles under these fencing systems, and they sprayed the acid rain on it. They sprayed another one just measuring the acid rain, and they compared the amount of cadmium or whatever the heavy metal was that came out. And they documented clearly that that's where they came from. And also the grates around the different drains are also galvanized, so it could have come from there as well.
So how does these are all, like all these pots are part of one watershed.
Yep.
But how are they connected to one another? Is there a whole system of tubes underneath the plants?
No, these are separate flats, 2 feet by 4 feet.
So how does the water get, that's the drain there, yeah?
Okay, yep. So each one of these, as I explained, is shaped in such a way, so if I were to dump a gallon of water here, it would go to that drain. If I would dump a gallon of water here, it would go to that drain.
It has to go over the wall of the...
No, it goes underneath the plants.
Oh, they're open.
Yeah, they're open underneath. Yep, they've got holes in the bottom of them that allow for flow under there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think probably the most important thing that we've learned from this is that fact that I mentioned earlier, that more than 50% of the stormwater leaving this roof is retained by the green roof. And this is only 10 centimeters, about 4 inches thick. So if we could have put a 6-inch thick roof on here, we probably would have retained 70% of it. And another really important aspect of stormwater management, not only the amount or the volume of stormwater leaving an area, but it's also the flow rate. So it's really important for us to reduce the peak of that flow rate, because that peak causes problems such as erosion in nearby streams. But in Burlington area in particular, because they have what's called a one-pipe system, where a lot of the stormwater goes into the same pipe as the sewer drain water. And so if you have a big storm, it overwhelms the sewer treatment system, and they actually have to discharge raw sewage into the lake during those times with those high peak flows. But if we can reduce that peak flow, that means there's less time that they have to discharge untreated materials, and therefore it has a less of a negative impact on water quality in Lake Champlain.
Spec out? Like
yeah, that was one of the issues, given that it was an existing building. They had to, work with the existing structure of the building, and they did all the calculations and told us that we couldn't exceed only 4 inches of soil.
Do you know if they considered, when they built these new buildings, doing green roofs?
Well, I don't think so. I mean, university, it really would be expensive. I think that I got a deal. I only paid like a third as much as we would have, because I convinced companies that I can give them research data to support or not support their system.
Yeah.
A 1.5 foot thicker foam on it than.
Yeah, that really comes down.
Yeah.
And they're all the same size, right?
No, they're all different sizes. Yeah, which means you have to standardize the data.
Right.
Yeah.
This is a good lesson.
Yeah, and it's kind of neat that the way, I had students out here measuring and calculating the different watershed sizes.
Yeah.
Which worked okay, but then, we came upon really good images from Google. In addition to that, we have a full meteorological station that allows us to measure things like temperature, wind speed, moisture, snow level, radiation levels for sunlight, and other parameters like that. Another attribute of green roofs, I think we're going to talk today mostly about stormwater management and the impacts of green roofs on stormwater management. But there are other benefits too. One of them is it actually provides insulation. So we've got 56 thermocouples up here measuring the temperature at 1 meter in height, temperature in the vegetation, temperature in the soil, and temperature below the flats of plants, so that we can document the impact of the green roof on keeping the building cooler in the summer and warmer in the winter. In addition to that, there's aesthetic value to a green roof. People really love being up here and enjoying it. One of the problems we have in the Aiken Center is that access to the green roof is really limited because of very steep stairs that we have to come up. So that's why we do events like this, so that we can invite people to view this from outside the university and outside the Aiken Center, so that they kind of see what it's like to visualize a green roof.
Do you know how many green roofs there are?
Okay, I wanted to briefly go over this complete meteorological station that we have up here. This is really important for our data to be able to document like existing ambient temperatures, wind speed. Like if you look out, starting from the top, you've got an anemometer, you got a wind direction. This is a tipping bucket system that measures precipitation, both frozen precipitation and liquid precipitation. These are actually radiometers, which measure sunlight. There's kind of two measurements that they're taking. They're doing like a total sunlight, and then they're doing, there's one that's called a PAR measuring device. And I'll challenge you to tell me what PAR means, so that you can pause with that. So one of the things you might expect will be important is not only the total sunlight is important, but what do plants see? What value is there to plants to the different wavelengths? So we have two photosystems in plants that operate most efficiently at two different wavelengths. And that's what's measured by PAR, which means photosynthetically active radiation. So that's an important term that gives us information about, we can adjust for performance of photosynthesis and things like that. As I mentioned earlier, we record a lot of data in here. This is a complete data logger that allows us to measure every 5 minutes. We measure the temperature of those 56 thermocouples that are in the soil and in the air. We measure ambient temperature, we measure precipitation and the various radiation inputs. And we're fortunate in that we do have an internet connection here, so we can monitor that. I can sit down in my office and pull up that data. It's a massive data set because it's been going for 7 years and it measured it every 5 minutes. So we've got a great deal of data here that helps us interpret some of the performance of the different watersheds. So one thing that I mentioned earlier is the access to this space up here is not optimal. We would love to be able to have anybody that wants to come up here and see what it's like, but that wasn't possible. So in place of that, as a somewhat decent substitute, we put up a video camera that's available through the internet, where anybody can view that live up here. So you could, not that there's a lot of things that move around on a green roof, but you can see a live pictures of what's going on up here.
Do you know if there's
rains, there's a funnel of unknown. So in this container right here is what we call a tipping bucket system for measuring precipitation. So literally there's a bucket, a little bucket in there, that when it fills up, it tips one way, and then it has another piece to it, fills up and tips the other way. And so that data, each time it tips, it trips a little electrical signal that goes into the data logger, and we know the volume of each tip, and we then know the time, so we can tell you exactly how much precipitation is coming in. Okay, so I explained the tipping bucket system. So in there's a little bucket that precipitation goes into, tips, and every time it tips, it sends a signal to the data logger, records how many tips there are per given period of time, and we know the exact volume of water that leaves per tip. The next question I have for you is, this is functional in the winter as well. So you might say, well, wait a minute, how does that tipping bucket work in the winter time when it's 20 below, freezing snow, sleet, rain is hitting it? How do you think it works? So the way it works is that tipping bucket in the wintertime below a certain temperature is heated. So then it melts that snow as it hits, and you get what we call a water equivalent of the snow. So that way we know how much water is coming in via snow. And it's kind of challenging too to work with data from here, because that snow that hits, doesn't drain through our watersheds immediately. So we could have 3 feet of snow up here. So we just have to monitor it. Whenever it melts, you get a little bit of leakage through the system. But then in the spring, we have, just like forests do, you have a big runoff period that we want to capture as well.
Do you know if the weight of snow is brought into the calculations of what the weight of the roof can hold? Like, is there a...
Yeah, it was. They supposedly did it with a maximum snow load as well.
Right.
But that was there before, so the snow load shouldn't make too much difference of what we could add.
This has always been flat.
Yeah, it's always been flat.
Okay. That's fascinating.
Okay, do we want to go down and look at the tipping buckets?
Yep, yes. Can I ask one question? Gary, are you coming up here in the winter to keep track of snowpack?
No. I mean, we could, like in other remote areas, we could use this camera and leave a stake in the ground and have a video image of it, but it hasn't really mattered to us the total amount of snow on it. We can detect some levels of snow from the thermocouple readings, because if you have 2 feet of snow, it insulates better and you have different readings from that.
And you cannot tell the kind of precipitation, because everything you get is melted?
Yes, yeah, we don't get an indication of whether it's frozen. I mean, we could couple it with temperature readings and try to say, okay, if it's 20 below out, this has got to be snow.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going off on a tangent, which is road salting on campus, and if they know if it's freezing rain or if it's snow or if it's rain, they might do something different.
Yeah.
But you have to be able to
Interesting.
know.
Yeah, there's a lot of activity I've seen, well, mainly with some of the Sea Grant stuff, where they're concerned about salt going into watersheds and things like that.
Right.
Yeah.